There are days when the soul grows weary of its own performance. Perhaps you know this feeling too well. The smile that appears on cue, like clockwork, while something deeper inside whispers, "Enough." I see you there, moving through your days with that careful grace, attending to everyone's needs, responding with "I'm fine" when asked how you're doing, those two small words that have become both shield and prison. You've carried this weight for so long that sometimes you forget it's there. Until your shoulders remind you, until your heart reminds you, you are not alone in this quiet exhaustion, this space between who you are and who you show the world. We become so skilled at wearing our masks, don't we? The pleasant face we show at family gatherings, the capable one at work, the strong one for our children, the composed one for strangers. Layer upon layer of carefully constructed expressions that rarely crack, even when the foundation beneath them trembles. I remember the first time I recognized my own mask. How startled I was to realize how automatically I reached for it each morning, like keys or reading glasses. How I had stopped noticing its weight. There's something both brave and heartbreaking about this daily transformation. How we've learned to separate our inner landscape from what the world is allowed to see. The way we've convinced ourselves this division is necessary. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if we set these masks down, just for a moment, not forever. Just long enough to remember the feel of air on our true face. You see, a mask worn too long begins to leave marks on the skin. Invisible perhaps, but no less real. Little places where we've forgotten how to move our genuine expressions, where the muscles of authentic feeling have grown stiff from disuse. This isn't about blame, dear one. We create these masks for reasons that once made perfect sense. Protection, acceptance, love, survival. You fashioned yours with the wisdom you had at the time. But wisdom evolves, doesn't it? And perhaps there's a deeper protection in occasional truthfulness, a more profound acceptance in being seen, even briefly, as you truly are. Your exhaustion is speaking to you. It's not weakness calling, it's wisdom. The part of you that knows pretending exacts a cost, one paid in the currency of your spirit. Tonight, before sleep claims you, I invite you to notice your face in that private moment, to witness, with gentle eyes, how it changes when no one is watching. There is such beauty in that unguarded expression, such truth. Have you noticed how heavy words become when they remain unsaid? How they gather weight in the throat, the chest, the shoulders, anywhere they can find room to settle within you. I've carried these unspoken truths myself. I'm struggling. I need help. I don't know how to continue like this. I'm not as strong as you think I am. Simple sentences that somehow transform into boulders we cannot push past our lips. We hold them back for so many reasons. Fear of burdening others, the terror of being seen as insufficient, the dread of disappointment in another's eyes. Or perhaps most painful of all, the possibility that we might speak and still not be heard. There was a time in my life when I believed strength meant carrying everything silently. When I mistook stoicism for courage, I would nod and smile when asked how I was faring, while inside, a storm was gathering force. I thought this was what it meant to be a good woman, a good mother, a good friend to absorb difficulty without complaint. But storms contained only grow more powerful, don't they? They feed on their own energy until even the strongest vessels begin to crack under the pressure. Your unspoken words are not just phrases, they're pieces of your truth, your authentic experience in this world. And when we continually swallow our reality to maintain peace or protect others, we begin to lose connection with ourselves. I wonder what might happen if you allowed just one truth to rise to the surface, not all at once, just one small, authentic admission to someone safe, or perhaps first to your own reflection, spoken softly in a private moment. The body keeps such careful accounts of what we suppress. The tension in your neck, the headaches that come without warning, the fatigue that sleep doesn't seem to touch. These are not signs of failure, they're messages from a self that longs to be acknowledged. Your silence was once protection, a sanctuary you built when speaking felt too dangerous. I honor the wisdom that created that shelter when you needed it most. But perhaps now, your spirit craves a different kind of safety, the kind that comes from gentle truth-telling. From allowing your inner and outer worlds to move a few steps closer together. This isn't about dramatic confessions or upending your life. It's about creating small openings where truth can breathe, where you can breathe alongside it. There's a particular moment I've come to recognize. It arrives when a smile, that reflexive upturning of lips that's become almost involuntary, suddenly feels like the heaviest expression your face has ever had to hold. When maintaining it requires more energy than you seem to possess. Have you felt it? That subtle shift when something so automatic begins to cost too much? I remember sitting at a gathering once, surrounded by laughter and conversation, when I felt my smile begin to tremble under its own weight. Not visibly, no, we become too skilled for that. But internally, where no one could witness it, the exhaustion of that moment startled me. How something so small, the curve of lips, the crinkle of eyes, could suddenly feel like lifting stone. Your smile has been a gift to many, a comfort, a reassurance that all is well in their world because you appear untroubled in yours. There is such generosity in that offering, even when it comes at your own expense. But smiles were never meant to be permanent fixtures. They were designed to rise and fall naturally, like breath, like tides, to appear in moments of genuine pleasure and recede when other emotions need their turn in the light. When was the last time you allowed your face to rest in its natural expression? Not frowning, not smiling, just being. There's such relief in that neutrality, such honesty. I've learned, slowly and not without resistance, that a genuine frown can sometimes be more healing than a practiced smile. That tears visible on cheeks can create more authentic connection than dry eyes that cost you countless drops in private. This isn't an invitation to discard joy or to avoid the lightness of genuine happiness. Rather, it's permission to stop producing emotions you don't feel. To recognize that authentic connection with yourself and others requires the full spectrum of your truth. Your face, when allowed to express what truly moves within you, becomes not just honest, but holy. Sacred in its unfiltered response to life as it actually unfolds, not as you wish it would appear. The people who truly love you don't require your perpetual okayness. They're waiting, perhaps, for the honor of witnessing your humanity in all its complex glory. The relief of seeing you really seeing you might be the greatest gift you could offer them. And yourself. There is a garden that blooms only when watered with honest tears. I've visited this place many times in my journey, though at first I was reluctant to enter its gates. Perhaps you know this hesitation too, the way we hold ourselves back from the release that weeping brings. We're taught so early that tears are weakness, that they should be hidden away, contained, managed, especially as women who've carried families, careers, communities upon our shoulders, as if our strength and our tears cannot occupy the same space, as if one negates the other. But I want to whisper something to you that took me decades to understand. Tears are not the absence of strength. They are not failure or fragility. They are perhaps the most honest conversation your body can have with your soul. I remember the first time I gave myself permission to weep without restraint, not the quiet, dignified tears that barely dampen cheeks, but the kind that come from someplace ancient within us, that rise like a tide and wash through every hidden corner of our being. It felt like betrayal at first of all, my careful composure of the woman I'd worked so hard to become. But as those tears continued, something shifted. The knot that had lived between my shoulders for so long began to soften. The tightness in my chest, a companion so familiar I'd stopped noticing its presence, began to release. When we deny ourselves the language of tears, we deny ourselves the deepest form of self-compassion. The acknowledgement that yes, this hurts. Yes, this is hard. Yes, I feel this deeply. We deny ourselves the cleansing that can only come through release. Your tears, those you've held back for so long, are not signs of brokenness. They are evidence of your capacity to feel, to care, to connect with the depth of your own experience. They are sacred messengers carrying truth from the deepest part of you to the surface where it can finally be acknowledged. There is no timeline for this garden's tending, no right moment or perfect circumstance. Your tears will come when they're ready, when you create enough safety for their arrival. And when they do, I hope you'll receive them not as intruders, but as long-awaited guests bringing gifts of release. After rain, everything looks different, doesn't it? Colors more vibrant, air more clear. So too with honest tears. They don't solve everything, but they clear our vision in ways nothing else can. They remind us that we are not made of stone but of water. Fluid, flowing, ever-changing, capable of both strength and surrender in the same moment. When was the last time you noticed your breath? Not changed it, not deepened it, just noticed its natural rhythm moving through your body. This simple act of awareness is where truth begins to find its voice again. I've come to believe that our breath knows our reality before our minds are willing to acknowledge it. When we're pretending, it grows shallow, constrained as if our bodies are physically limiting how much life we allow in. As if somehow, deep inside, we know that to breathe fully would risk feeling fully, and that honest feeling seems too dangerous a proposition. Place your hand on your chest for a moment. Feel the rise and fall beneath your palm. Is your breath reaching all the way down to your belly, or is it caught high in your chest? There's no judgment in this question, only invitation to witness where you are right now. For years, I moved through my days barely breathing, taking in just enough oxygen to function, to keep going. I didn't realize how accustomed I'd become to this half-living until one day, during a moment of rare stillness, I found myself taking a breath that seemed to reach places within me that had been empty for so long. It startled me, this sensation of being filled completely, of air touching the neglected corners of my being. And with that breath came awareness of tension I'd stopped feeling, of emotions I'd pushed down so successfully I'd forgotten they existed. We cannot selectively numb ourselves. When we shut down our pain, our fatigue, our overwhelm, we inadvertently shut down everything else too, our capacity for joy, for wonder, for the full measure of our aliveness. Your breath is the bridge between your external performance and your internal reality. Each inhale an opportunity to acknowledge what's truly present for you. Each exhale a chance to release what you've been clutching so tightly. This isn't about breathing exercises or techniques, though those have their place. This is simpler and perhaps more profound. It's about allowing your breath to be as honest as it naturally is, to let it reveal to you what you might not be ready to put into words. When we begin breathing into our truth, changes happen that we don't need to force. Shoulders soften slightly, jaws unclench. The mask loosens its grip, not dramatically, but enough to let small slivers of authenticity shine through. You've spent so long accommodating yourself to others' needs, others' air. Perhaps now is the time to remember that you too deserve the full expansion of your lungs, the complete cycle of breath that is your birthright, not as performance or practice, but as the simple, revolutionary act of being fully present in your own life. Rest has become a radical act in a world that measures worth by productivity. Perhaps you've felt this too, the guilt that creeps in when you pause, the restlessness that arrives when you finally have a moment to yourself, as if stopping is somehow a betrayal of all you should be doing. I want to speak about rest, not as luxury, but as necessity, not as something to be earned, but as something as essential as breath. Your body has been sending signals perhaps for years now, the heaviness in your limbs, the mind that won't quiet even when you lie down, the fatigue that sleep doesn't seem to touch. These aren't character flaws or signs of weakness. They're wisdom speaking through the only language your body has: sensation, the truth that cannot be silenced even when words fail. For so long, I mistook exhaustion for normal. I wore it like a badge of honor, evidence of how much I could handle, how necessary I was, how strong. I didn't recognize that what felt like strength was actually distance from myself, from the signals that would have guided me toward what I truly needed. There is a particular type of exhaustion that comes from pretending. It seeps deeper than physical tiredness. It reaches into the marrow of our bones, the chambers of our hearts, because maintaining a facade requires constant vigilance, checking and rechecking what can be revealed and what must remain hidden. This is not just tiring, it is depleting in a way that touches our very essence. What would it mean to give yourself permission to rest? Not just your body, but your spirit, your performing self, to set down the weight of others' expectations and, perhaps more difficult, your expectations of yourself. Rest looks different for each of us. For some, it's literal stillness. For others, it's movement that feels like freedom rather than obligation. It might be creativity without pressure to produce, connection without responsibility to manage others' emotions, nature without a destination to reach. The form matters less than the intention: to return to yourself, to remember who you are beneath the roles you play and the masks you wear. I've come to believe that rest is not the opposite of productivity, but its source, that the most genuine offering we can make to those we love is our presence, not our perpetual doing, not our carefully curated okayness, but our true, replenished selves. Your exhaustion is not the enemy. It's the messenger bringing news of what you've needed all along. The invitation to a different way of being, one where worth isn't proven but simply acknowledged as your inherent birthright. Where rest isn't the reward for completion, but the foundation from which all meaningful action arises. There's a thread I've noticed woven through many of our lives, particularly for women who were raised to be the emotional caretakers, the peacekeepers, the ones who make everything better for everyone else. It's the belief that our value lies in how well we please others, in how effectively we can anticipate and meet their needs, often before they even recognize these needs themselves. I carried this belief for so many years, this constant scanning of rooms to see who needed what, the subtle adjustments to my own expression, opinions, even my posture to make others comfortable. The way I would swallow my own truth if it might cause someone else's discomfort. Do you recognize this in yourself? The way you might shapeshift ever so slightly, depending on who's present? The exhaustion that comes from constantly monitoring the emotional temperature of every situation you enter? There is such nobility in caring for others, in attuning yourself to their needs. But somewhere along the way, for many of us, this natural empathy transformed into something heavier, the belief that we are responsible for everyone's comfort, everyone's happiness, that our own needs matter only after everyone else's have been satisfied. I remember the first time I consciously chose not to smooth over an awkward moment, not to fill a silence, not to make something easier for someone who could carry their own discomfort. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating all at once, as if I was breaking some ancient contract I'd never actually agreed to, but had always honored. The need to please keeps us performing even when our souls are begging for rest. It keeps the mask firmly in place, the smile fixed, the yes ready on our lips when everything in our being wants to say, no, not this time. But here is what I've learned, and what I offer to you now. You can love people deeply, care for them genuinely, without being responsible for their emotions. You can be kind without being available to everyone at all times. You can be valuable, invaluably so, without earning that value through constant accommodation of others' needs. Releasing the need to please doesn't mean becoming selfish or uncaring. It means expanding your circle of compassion to include yourself. It means recognizing that your needs are not an inconvenient footnote to your life, but central chapters without which the story cannot be complete. This release happens in small moments. The pause before automatically saying yes, the gentle boundary, offered without apology, the truth spoken kindly but without dilution. Each tiny act of authentic self-expression is a thread gently, lovingly untangled from the web of pleasing that has held you for so long. Your worth has never been in how well you accommodate others. It has always been in the unique constellation of qualities that make you who you are, your perspective, your heart, your particular way of moving through the world. Not as you think others need you to be, but as you actually are. There's a particular kind of strength I want to speak about. Not the kind that holds everything together, that pushes through exhaustion, that refuses to bend. You've mastered that kind already, perhaps too well. I want to speak of a different strength, the courage to surrender. In our world, surrender is often misunderstood as defeat, as giving up. But what if true surrender is actually a profound recognition of what is real? An acknowledgement of our human limits, not as flaws, but as natural boundaries that define the territory of our lives? I resisted this understanding for so long, saw my capacity to endure, to keep going when everything in me wanted to stop, as my greatest asset, my defining feature, the thing that made me worthy of love and respect. Perhaps you've felt this too, the belief that to admit you cannot continue as you have been would mean failure, that to acknowledge your exhaustion, your need for change, would disappoint everyone who relies on your unwavering strength. But here is what I've come to know. There is more power in honest vulnerability than in forced resilience. More wisdom in acknowledging when a way of being no longer serves you than in maintaining it at all costs. More courage in saying, I cannot do this anymore, than in silent endurance. Surrender isn't about giving up your power. It's about releasing the exhausting illusion that you can control everything, that you can be everything to everyone without cost to yourself. It's about making peace with reality as it actually is, not as you wish it would be. I remember the day I finally surrendered to the truth of my own exhaustion, not as a temporary state to push through, but as a message from the deepest part of myself that change was not optional but essential. It felt like falling at first, terrifying and disorienting. But as I continued to fall, I realized something unexpected. Surrender itself became a kind of ground beneath me. Not the ground I had planned for or expected, but solid nonetheless. When we surrender the mask, the pretending, the perpetual okayness, we don't lose ourselves. We find ourselves. We discover the woman who has been waiting patiently beneath all those layers of performance and protection, the one who knows her own truth and is finally free to live it. This surrender happens differently for each of us. For some, it's a dramatic moment of recognition. For others, including myself, it's a gradual, unfolding, small moments of honest acknowledgement that eventually lead to profound change. Whatever form it takes for you, know this. Your surrender is not weakness. It is the ultimate act of self-respect, of honoring the truth of your life as it actually is, rather than as you've been pretending it should be. And in that honoring lies a strength more genuine and sustaining than any mask could ever provide. There comes a moment in the journey from pretending to authenticity when you begin to recognize a sensation that might have been absent for so long you've forgotten its texture. It arrives quietly at first, this feeling of being at home in yourself, of movements that flow from your center rather than from careful calculation, of words that rise naturally to your lips rather than being filtered through layers of should and must and what will they think. I call this blooming in your own light. The gradual unfurling that happens when you stop turning constantly toward others' expectations and instead allow yourself to be nourished by your own truth. For so many years, I grew toward others' light, bent myself toward their approval, their needs, their vision of who I should be. I didn't realize how exhausting this constant reorientation was until I began, tentatively at first, to stand straight in my own soil, to trust the wisdom of my own roots, my own particular way of reaching toward the sun. Perhaps you've caught glimpses of this already brief moments when you've acted from your center without second guessing, when you've spoken a truth that surprised even you with its clarity, when you've felt the relief of being simply, unapologetically yourself, even if just for a breath or two. These moments are not accidents or anomalies, they're reminders of what's possible when we release the performance. Little windows into the freedom that waits on the other side of pretending. Blooming in your own light doesn't happen all at once. After years of growing toward others, our internal compass recalibrates slowly. We still slip into old patterns of pleasing, of performing, of pushing down our truth to maintain peace. But with each return to authenticity, the path becomes more familiar, the way back to yourself more clearly marked. This blooming changes how we move through the world. Relationships may shift as we stop automatically accommodating and start honestly engaging. Some connections might fall away, while others deepen in response to our newfound authenticity. Work, family, even the simple routines of daily life take on different dimensions when approached from genuine presence rather than perfected performance. I want to be clear, this isn't about dramatic transformation or reinvention. It's about quiet reclamation, about returning to the woman you've always been beneath the roles and responsibilities that have defined your days. She's still there, your essential self, perhaps quieter now after years of being overruled, but still alive, still wise, still waiting for you to turn your attention inward and listen. Your particular way of blooming won't look like anyone else's. It will be as unique as your fingerprint, as specific as your voice. That's the beauty of authentic growth. It follows no prescribed path, but unfolds according to the wisdom inherent in each of us when we finally give it room to breathe. I want to speak now of something so simple yet so revolutionary it has the power to change everything: the pause. Not as a temporary holding pattern until you can resume your familiar pace. Not as a brief respite before picking up the weight again, but as a sacred space where new possibilities are born. The world rarely grants us permission to pause. Even our rest becomes productive self-care that makes us more efficient, meditation that improves our performance, vacations from which we return, recharged to do more, be more. But the pause I'm speaking of exists outside this economy of constant doing. It's not a means to an end, but a vital destination in itself. A conscious stepping out of the stream of activity to remember who you are when you're not producing, providing, proving your worth through perpetual motion. I discovered the power of this pause late in my journey. After decades of movement, raising children, building career, tending relationships, I found myself in a period of enforced stillness. At first, I resisted it with everything in me, felt myself disappearing without the familiar landmarks of productivity and purpose. But slowly, something remarkable began to happen in that unstructured space. Parts of myself I'd forgotten or never fully known began to emerge. Desires untethered from others' needs. Dreams I'd set aside so long ago I'd stopped recognizing their absence. A way of seeing the world that belonged to me alone. The sacred pause offers this gift, the chance to distinguish between the life you've accumulated and the life that genuinely reflects your deepest truths. To sift through all you've carried and consciously choose what you'll continue to hold and what you're finally ready to set down. This doesn't require grand gestures or dramatic changes. It begins with small moments intentionally claimed, 5 minutes of stillness before the household wakes, a meal eaten slowly, without distraction. A deliberate choice to leave a space unfilled, a day without plans, an hour without purpose, a conversation with room for silence. In these pauses, we remember something our busy lives often obscure. We are not defined by what we accomplish, but by what we notice, what we cherish, what we bring our full presence to. Our worth is not measured in tasks completed, but in moments fully inhabited. The exhaustion of pretending eases in the sacred pause. The mask grows less necessary when there's no performance required. The smile returns to its natural rhythm, appearing when genuine, fading when not, each expression an honest reflection of your inner weather. I cannot promise this path is easy. The pause can feel frightening at first, a confrontation with all we've been too busy to feel, too occupied to acknowledge. But I can promise it's worth the initial discomfort, that on the other side of that threshold lies a relationship with yourself, built on recognition rather than denial, on compassion rather than constant correction. Your heart has been asking for this pause. Your body has been signaling its necessity. Perhaps now is the time to listen, to claim this space not as indulgence, but as the foundation from which a more authentic life can finally emerge. As our time together draws to a close, I want to leave you with this. The journey from pretending to authenticity isn't a straight line, but a spiral. We move forward, then circle back to familiar patterns before advancing again. There will be days when the mask feels too heavy to wear, and days when it seems safer than showing your truth. Both are part of the path. What matters is not perfection, but presence. Not arriving at some imagined destination of constant authenticity, but developing a gentle awareness of when you're performing and when you're truly present. And in that awareness lies the seed of everything that wants to bloom in you now. It's not the end. It's simply the moment when you give yourself permission to rest in your own truth. And resting in truth is also an act of love.